International mediators say Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire deal, pausing their 15-month war in the Gaza Strip. Qatar's Prime Minister and US President Joe Biden announced the agreement after sponsoring weeks of difficult negotiations that also included involvement by President-elect Donald Trump. The deal calls for a 6-week halt in fighting beginning on Sunday. Now, during these 6 weeks, about 1/3 of the hostages held in Gaza are to be released. Israeli troops will begin to pull back from their positions. Israel will release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians can begin to go back to their former homes. The international community also will pour large amounts of desperately needed humanitarian aid into Gaza. Hamas quickly announced its acceptance of the deal, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has so far remained silent. Israel's figurehead president appealed to the Israeli leader to quickly get his cabinet's approval. The agreement is a major breakthrough, but it does not guarantee an end to the war. But its sponsors are hoping that it will jumpstart negotiations in a future phase aimed at ending the conflict altogether. That would mean a full withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, the return of all remaining hostages, and ending a conflict that has caused widespread destruction and sorrow across the region.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office. Before I begin, let me speak to important news from earlier today. After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team, and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans.
Australia welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire and hostage agreement in Gaza after 15 months of conflict and a devastating loss of civilian life. The Australian government has consistently been part of international calls for a ceasefire and for a release of hostages. This agreement is a constructive step towards peace and stability in the region. Today must mark the beginning of a new chapter for the Israeli and Palestinian people. We hope it will allow the Palestinian people the opportunity to rebuild, reform their governance, which is most necessary, and pursue self-determination.
כנשיא מדינת ישראל, אני אומר בצורה הברורה ביותר, זה מהלך נכון, זה מהלך חשוב, זה מהלך הכרחי. אין חובה מוסרית ואנושית, יהודית וישראלית יותר גדולה מלהחזיר אלינו את אחיותינו ואחינו, מי לשיקום לביתו ומי למנוחה נכונה. כולנו כמהים לחזרתם של אחיותינו ואחינו, של כל אחיותינו ואחינו. אין כאן אשליות. העסקה הזאת, כאשר תחתם, תאושר ותמומש, תביא איתה רגעים קשים, מייסרים ומטלטלים ביותר. היא תביא איתה גם אתגרים קשים ביותר. זו לא סיטואציה פשוטה. מדובר באחד האתגרים הקשים ביותר שידענו.
Un'ottima notizia, è un passo importante verso la pace. Ora bisogna consolidare questo cessate il fuoco, andare avanti con le successive tappe. Non è sufficiente, dobbiamo arrivare a compiere altri passi importanti. L'Italia sarà sempre più presente. Lunedì sarò in Israele e Palestina proprio per incoraggiare e favorire questo processo di pace. Noi riteniamo che l'obiettivo finale debba essere quello di due popoli, due stati. Siamo pronti anche a dare una presenza militare in occasione di un'eventuale scelta delle Nazioni Unite di dar vita a una sorta di amministrazione modello UNIFIL in Palestina per unificare striscia di Gaza e West Bank.
Netanyahu, la domanda sulle garanzie a Netanyahu?
Mi pare che è tutto molto chiaro, ci sono delle immunità e le immunità vanno rispettate.
現地時間1月15日、ガザ情勢をめぐり、人質の解放と停戦に関する合意が、当事者間で成立したことを我が国として歓迎をいたします。これは我が国が求め続けてきました人道状況の改善と事態の沈静化に向けた重要な一歩であります。引き続き関係国国際機関と緊密に意思疎通を行いつつ、ガザの人道状況の改善、復興及び統治に関する国際的な努力に積極的に関与するとともに、二国家解決及び長期的な地域の平和と安定の確立に向けた外交努力を重ねてまいります。
Canada stands ready to do whatever it can to ensure the success of this agreement. But more than that, this ceasefire gives us hope. Hope that we can now focus our attention on a true, lasting political solution to this conflict, a two-state solution with Israelis and Palestinians living side by side in safety, security, and dignity. And hope that here in Canada, we can turn down the temperature, truly listen to one another, and ultimately rebuild the relationships between various communities which have been deeply damaged since October 2023. For Palestinian, Israeli, Lebanese, Jewish, and Arab Canadians, I know this war has been deeply hurtful, and I hope that today's news brings some solace, some relief.